Oh hey, didn't see you there. I'm on an everlasting quest to become anime. Not because I'm crazy or anything, I just think it would be funny. So I want you to guess what, I think you should guess who has fleas. That's right, isn't that pretty? Parasyte? That's spelled with a Y. Parasyte is a series that has an incredible rich history. The anime may be relatively new with the 2014 release, but the manga originally dropped in 1988 and was an absolute phenomenon, having a lifetime sales in 24 millions, which makes it all the stranger that it took 26 years for the manga to hit the whole anime scene. But now that I mentioned that, I can't not talk about the localizations that the original Tokyo Pop's English print in 1998 had. To list off some of the easy ones, everything was mirrored to read left to right instead of right to left, which is manga's more traditional way of doing things, which means anything directional base had to change, like the Parasyte in Shinichi's right hand named Migi, you know, the one that means right, while his English name had to be turned into Lefty. Now I don't know how to tell my left from my right. Which one of you guys are sentient? Other names were also changed, like Satomi? Now I don't even know what that could mean. That's Sarah right there. Those are roughly the changes that were made without going too deep into this one part. But, well, the original manga ended at volume 10, but the English version ended at 12, and I don't know how they did that. I thought Korean matter was frowned upon this side of the country, but I try to be open-minded. You stopped at volume 10? You need to check out volume 15. The ending is the best. It's up to your interpretation. Reception for Parasyte is incredible. Conversation about it and inspiration from it is still kinda going around. Reviewers love the manga, and if we slap a the maximum on it to get the anime, same story. But what is this series about? Well, have you ever had fleas? Okay, well, if you ever had fleas, but they were a group of creatures that took on human hosts and were monstrous and violent, but you are now part flea because of the one in your hand? Last Wednesday, actually. Thank you for asking. A bunch of mysterious alien eggs came from the sky and began to hatch in the form of snake-like creatures and began to take over people. Our protagonist, Shinichi, was one of the people who had his own pet monster, Scary Snake, but was able to avoid getting his head taken over and rewritten by tying a headphone cord around his arm to prevent the parasite that went into his hand going all the way up to his mind. Ah, son of a bitch, all I have is Bluetooth. The anime Parasyte nails that specific feeling of weird monstrous creatures doing weird things. The fights and shapeshifting are so otherworldly and bizarre, which is accompanied perfect with its OST, which is in a very electronic style, which really stands out at first, but then it just feels right for the story, even though, well, the manga started in the 80s, but with how seamless the story has been modernized, I didn't think twice about it. No matter how weird things go, it's not impossible to get used to, almost at the same rate as the protagonist. Nothing like some good old body horror to make you feel immersed. But what's an interesting premise without some characters to go along with it? The two most important characters are of course Shinichi and Migi, who are practically unrecognizable by the end of the show. This is a type of show where the main character you see at first isn't the same as the one that you say goodbye to. Through the trials that take place in Parasyte, Shinichi gets deeply affected mentally and physically, and god, it's just portrayed so well for his development. He doesn't just become badass, he also becomes traumatized. And he gets a new haircut. Don't let them forget to tell you about the haircut. And to add a little horror to this body horror is Migi, who's Shinichi's right-hand man, but instead of a man, he's just a monster that kinda has control and lives in Shinichi's hand. Migi is a cruelly illogical creature that has the objective of staying alive. And while that lines of Shinichi not wanting to die, for a fair while into the show, they are not allies or friends. They are quite literally just in a parasitic relationship. Of course it will be a cold day in hell when two leads don't have some kind of understanding through each other, but seeing how this dynamic is just hasn't been done the same in other anime. Just how Migi's an asset but is also a detriment because he doesn't want to be known, he doesn't want to be in danger, and it's hard to disagree with him. I mean, my right hand has done more evil things. Let's try to sell other people's recipes. Oh, it has to be cold? That's how my batch came out wrong. But the lack of ability for Shinichi to be open is causing him his own problems. Both of these characters develop into each other's perspectives a bit. Shinichi loses some of his morality and humanity as the series progresses. Migi also kind of develops this understanding of human logic, and while you know Migi's willing to appeal to that or understands that Shinichi isn't going to act against it, it's long before you know how he really feels. And the rest of the cast sets the perfect scene for these dynamics to form. The parents Shinichi can't tell anything to, Satomi, who serves as the love interest to Shinichi and observes their exchanges but is completely oblivious to why or what is happening. And that shows the consequences of keeping the whole Parasyte thing a secret, because she has every reason to be upset at not knowing why Shinichi's trying to pretend nothing's going on when he literally went from here to here and won't elaborate. Yeah, that's why I never tell anyone about my Parasyte situation. I genuinely cannot tell you the last time I paid for Netflix. Reiko Tamura, who is a Parasyte that probably has the best view of humanity and is just brilliant, at least compared to all the other Parasytes. She's involved in the plot but does not overstay her welcome, just popping in here and there to make things really interesting. Kana, who can sense parasites but doesn't understand what she's sensing in people, making her think that she's sensing some form of the red thread of fate to Shinichi. But mentioning all of these characters and the role they play would actually be a spoiler because when they come in, the state of the world of Parasyte is different than before their introduction. That's just how great of a job the series does at evolving itself. Get it? Like, evolving, you know, because like a lot of the species stuff involves joke over, go back to the voiceover. I said go! But I would be absolutely mistaken to not bring up the incredible world building in this series. Now, I'm a big believer that a piece of fiction doesn't have to be believable in order for it to be good. Or world building, there's always something great about a series that will just make whatever it wants to be, or be so far separated from reality, but there's something special about the opposite. When you see an insanely supernatural situation, and then the in-world's response to it just makes you go, well damn. That just makes sense. Like when people die in Parasyte, I know some people in the dead community that went crazy for that. Like there isn't some kind of anti-parasite technology that is used to detect them or fight them. It's kind of just x-ray scanners and shotguns when it's the humans fighting. There are little bits added to the culture, like people pulling out each other's hair as a greeting for a sly way to check for parasites. Would humanity act this way if parasites were real? Who's to say, really, but it does seem very believable, and most of the times anything happens in the show, it does feel like that would be the case, which really helps the series when it comes to expressing its... If I could read backwards, I think I'd have a reaction. You thought you were going to have a sci-fi property that didn't have some form of meta commentary? Think again. So if you want to ignore pretty much everything in this point, I still think Parasyte is an incredible, enjoyable experience. It succeeds in having both great, shallow, and deep aspects, and Parasyte really nails what it wants to hit. One of which being the before mentioned morality of the characters. Shinichi goes through a lot of changes throughout the series, one of which is struggling with his morality and humanity. Yes, a human wants to be more human, but in his situation, having a little bit less of column A and column B certainly does help. It's just when Parasyte wants to tackle a question or display a dilemma, it does so just so well, and with it being based on an older manga but with modern twists for some details, it stands out with the strengths of the past but doesn't stand out with an outdated world. As I mentioned multiple times now, the original Parasyte manga was around 25 years old when the anime came out, and believe it or not, the world has changed since then. To list some notable changes, the McRib came back a few times, Kirby Right Back At Ya aired, and... no, that about covers it. It manages to be modernized without being changed at its core. People have smartphones and computers are more common and they are integrated into places that just make sense, but other than that, the core of the story is exactly the same. It just takes place in the mid-2010s rather than the 1990s. And it really helps it stand out because it has the charm of older writing that's free from some of the tropes that have been created, but it still feels completely modern. It's a unique charm that's honestly very few manga adaptations get the chance to do, even if it's capable of doing it well. Parasyte is a fantastic show that managed to create something unique story-wise and industry-wise. However, it gave me the intense fear that my right hand will become sentient and become a killer, or like even worse. No, anything but that, please!